It's limitation again, dude. It's limitation reborn. But yeah, this is basically Ogre Battle reborn. Like, this is exactly. Alrighty, hello, every folks, and good morning. Welcome to a quick discussion. It's not going to be quick on Unicorn Overlord's difficulty. Alright, so let me just go ahead and say right from the get-go, personally, I feel like this thing is impeccably balanced, but, you know, opinions are going to opinion, and I wanted to address one of these things that you see come up quite a decent bit in terms of comments and things. I mean, this happens with every SRPG on release, frankly. It's one of those kind of frustrating things that there's always going to be folks showing up like, oh, you know, I figured out how to break everything. It's super easy. You just take this one thing and, oh my god, you never need to think about it again. And what's funny is that this is an RPG, which means that it is working as intended. That certain things are just going to be good in specific situations. And the actual difficulty in this game actually comes from, well, the kind of interplay between all of its different systems working together at one given time. Like, for example, any hard-hitting units that run against a druid are going to have a bad frickin' time, but as soon as that druid runs into some archer support fire, they are, you know, they're basically living the pincushion life. Any, you know, heavy or any infantry running into shields are going to have a hard time breaking through that, but cavalry or flyers are potentially going to have a far easier time dealing with them. Everything has a counter, and those counters oftentimes... Honestly, many of these squads feel like you're going and building a competitive Pokemon team or something in and of themselves. Where everyone's going to say that, oh, you know, they have that one thing that counters everything, and then just conveniently forget the stuff that countered it. The interplay between all of these different systems is fascinating. Like, basically, everyone's got that flyer assassin squad, right? Everyone's got at least, you know, at least one of these, oftentimes more than that. But that's the thing. We like to think about those moments of like, oh, they were able to ignore terrain. But look how fast they're moving compared with everything else. Look how often they have to take a rest compared with everything else. It's like, oftentimes what you'll see on comments, especially for maps like this, are just like, oh, just go send in the flyers. Oh, are you stupid? It's so easy to fix it. It's so easy to beat with just flyers. But that's, again, not the whole story. Because if you are, for example, playing on Expert or something along those lines, it's not a matter of just sending them in. If they go and they attempt to go and assassinate the leader squad there, then hopefully they brought along some units and maybe some extra valor points to do something like an attack call to be able to go and maybe push through a couple of the leaders in the leader squad. But they're still taking support fire. They're still vulnerable if they end up not getting them in the first swing. And even as you're seeing here with a level advantage, which will continue creeping up as this fight continues, it's not enough to deal with even basic units, let alone the command squads here. So it ends up being more a game of going and picking off those support units, flying into towers, sweeping people out of towers, going and attacking their campsites, taking rests at those campsites, luring units away, using something like the bear calls and stuff like that, or not the bear calls, but the bear swings, to go and throw those neutral units into forts to go soften them up. It's not as simple as just sending those flyers, because those flyers will take ages to get there, and meanwhile you're getting bum rushed from all directions by all kinds of different units. It's never just as simple as just the one unit goes and gets the job done 100% of the time every time. Even one of the squads you'll see here, a lane squad, he was purpose-built in this particular case to sit on one particular reinforcement tile and basically farm points. He is built with multiple Beast Slayer units. He has multiple debuffs and whatever else to shut down most of those Fox squads without taking enough damage that he can't be healed using just the stationary healing circles and things like that, you know? So it was a case where he was purposely built for that role, and even still, he could occasionally just get taken out by a random squad that came by because they wound up getting lucky, that they wound up breaking down the formation just in time, that maybe they just switched over to night and they're guaranteed to have first strike during the night. It's one of these cases of like, oh yeah, it's so broken, I figured out how this thing works. It's like, that thing works in that one situation, in that one time. And yeah, if the stars align and you do everything exactly correct, then yes, it's supposed to be broken. That's how good game design works. It's not broken. It is literally just the game is working as intended because the counter counters the thing that it's supposed to counter. You know? But like seeing things like the AI adapting to the stuff that you're doing, that if you use support fire, they'll go and they'll use their arbalesters to put down smoke bombs. Interestingly enough, if you take out these bear and fox squads, if you take out enough of them, they'll actually start sending out arbalesters to deal with the scouts that you're using to counter them. It's fascinating that I actually don't know what triggers this, but it was really interesting to see that they were using different types of squads depending on your situation. That was a theory before, but they legitimately just swapped out for a different type of squad entirely. They actually pull a interesting trick that killed one of my Iron Man runs for Ogre Battle 64 in a lot of these cases, where they will have death balls like that one over there, where they'll actually hide certain units that counter the units that counter the main units that you're trying to kill there, in order to try and trap you. That just a little bit of variation of a unit just going slightly to the side, and suddenly your big ace squad that was supposed to be going and icing all of these various units is having a much harder time. And so, for example, in this case, where we're on expert, we have that item limitation. We have a fight that's going on multiple directions, right? We're going and we're trying to prevent reinforcements from coming in because their numbers simply become overwhelming. So finally end up going and taking some towns here just to prevent those reinforcements from coming in. At one point, I don't think I have it in this recording, but at one point I was literally just going and sending cavalry squads using Wild Swing to go and just barely chip damage them just to delay reinforcements a little bit when it was difficult to deal with the upgraded Housecarl squads, the Vikings and all that. Even in this case, where we've got our ace squad that's sitting in a pretty cozy location, they still see that one of the squads that's in that ball over there will be enough to take them out. The support fire from those casters will be enough to finish off one of the units that they're running into issues with. So it became a thing of like, okay, who can I retreat out and go and swap in instead? Swapping your units between these different forts brought me back to the old Empire's Dawn of the Modern World days. I know very few of you have probably ever played that game. I was actually a little bit disappointed recently that I bought it again off of GOG thinking it would work. It did not, unfortunately. Like, it's this constant shuffling around of different counters. The fact that one single mistake might lead you to reshuffling your entire team. That even some of these Lobby squads might, again, be handy under some circumstances. Like, I was using those archers over there to just supplement the other squads in the area, but in this case, they were able to use some of their stamina instead of somebody else's to go finish off that bear squad, maybe save some ammo in that ballista, because I knew that I would probably need it later, because those 6 barricades aren't holding that bridge forever. But effectively, the strategy that I was going for in this case, even though the, simplified version is just, go send the flyers, you idiot. Yeah, they're sending in the flyers, but those flyers still have to deal with breaking down the support network they've got going on. There's the big death blob that will eventually break through. The flyer squad cannot deal with them without getting bogged down. And eventually they would get run down. I eventually have basically an infinite healing situation holding off in our main fortress over here. That's going to be one hell of a thing. Believe it or not, our kill count was over 100 squads by the end of this thing. And sure enough, yeah, on paper, the ultimate answer is send the flyers, but ultimately the flyers weren't even the thing that ended up killing the final unit here, because the flyers, even when specialized, simply didn't have enough punch to actually break through the final squad there. Because what I oftentimes don't see mentioned in those comments are those cases where, yeah, they will ambush you. They'll come up with interesting ways to actually deal with your bullshit, so to speak. Like, okay, so you send the flyer squad up north. What does the AI do once they see that you've kind of crossed into their territory? They send all of the bears to go hide in the woods, as well as the foxes. What does this mean? That if you try to fly over the mountains, you're potentially limiting your movement. If you try to use the woods, they will jump you, meaning that you can't know when your ideal encounters are going to happen. You don't necessarily know what you're going to be fighting. So that's already one aspect of it right there. On another, if you manage to get through, and you'll notice by the end of it, I had 9 points saved up, as well as 3 more banked up, to do 4 back-to-back wild charges, on top of using the flyer squad, and guess what? It's still not enough, even with a level advantage, to actually take out the leader squad here. If it becomes nighttime, they will simply out-heal anything that you do. So that's already out of the question. But at the same time, the what was I going to say here? We're out of items, so we can't simply, strengthen and defensive our way through it. So they're taking enough punishment. The bears with all of their AoEs will be able to still chip damage away your flyer squad to eventually take out at least one unit. At which point they're not doing anything. So even with all of that, even assuming it's still just a 1v1, it's only a 1v1 for about 3 seconds. Because if you fail that initial run through, which you probably will, instead what ends up happening is that they end up getting ambushed, once again, by arbalesters coming out of the woods, who are there specifically to shoot down your flyers because they knew that you would send in flyers. Which, yeah, by themselves they could probably win that 1v1, but you're probably already charging at the HQ at that point, and then they're taking all that support fire right to the face. Dude, you'll love to see it, you know? Like, they will regularly do all of this stuff. And again, bear in mind, we are less than a quarter of the way through this actual map here, even though we've taken out one of the leaders. I'm talking about, like, time-wise. And all the same, we've already burned through all of our item limitations here. And right now I'm just trying to get these griffins to survive one encounter so that I can evacuate them out of here. And now with that one leader kill, it's actually interesting that the map, once again, adapts to the stuff that you've done. So I go ahead and evacuate them out, but notice something here. The actual units that were on his side, again, this is like AoE 2 regicide logic right now, they will be around, they will attack if it's somebody nearby, but they usually won't go out of their way to be aggressive. They won't, like, if they have reinforcements, they'll spawn reinforcements, but, like, they're basically done in terms of their contribution to the fight. What's interesting is that I was setting up for, like, one big last stand here at their HQ, and what's interesting is that, yeah, this basically just becomes a free healing point for all intents and purposes. Aside from these first few squads that are already nearby and just getting aggroed because they see somebody there, they don't actually try to take it back. So if you have nobody there, they'll just kind of hang out and patrol around because they're just living their life. They're not particularly interested in seeing the fight continue. So yeah, what was interesting is that, yeah, we're kind of just setting up the death dot here. So this is something we'll see quite a bit of. That it becomes this kind of valor point economy that, from what I've heard about True Zenorian mode, is like, this is what I'm imagining the entire mode's going to be like, and that has me excited like you can't freaking believe. Because if it's entirely just valor point economy throughout the entire thing, oh, that's gonna kick ass. Because this was probably my favorite fight in anything that I've played in a very long time. Yes, part of it got somewhat repetitive. I don't care. This again brought me back to the X Division days. I know not many of the folks that are here will have been around from that time, but specifically, there's a large scene of mods for, like, XCOM, Xenonauts, all those kinds of things that specifically try to create this kind of feeling in those games, where it's this feeling of, like, you got to make use of every mechanic and you're constantly, like, retooling your team on the fly. You'll notice that several times during this fight I will just completely redo squads to better deal with the situations at hand. That as much as there's that reputation of, like, oh, you just make the one super amazing generalist squad, I guarantee you they're playing on either of the two medium difficulties. Because, like, on expert, it just simply, one generalist squad will eventually run into stuff that counters them. They will eventually run into brick walls. Everything runs into brick walls. There's always considerations. Maybe they're extremely susceptible to support fire. Maybe they are extremely susceptible to losing one particular unit. Oh, I'm just going to use something like toughness to survive with one health. Yes, and then some kind of random chip damage will kill them, and then suddenly they are just, like, completely spiraling. Those random, unexpected death spirals are just really a fascinating thing. This whole thing of being able to effectively re-roll your RNG when somebody is getting killed off here to just kind of nitty gritty your way through a win, it feels really nice, frankly. So like at this point, I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with all of this nonsense right here. That, all my better squads could potentially damage those units, but they're taking enough damage in return that it's not really going to be worthwhile for them to be the one that continues dealing with that fight. Elaine's squad over here is the best suited for dealing with them, but he's fairly low on stamina. But specifically, I have Elaine leading it instead of Hodrick, just because he's getting more points, and that constant influx of points is constantly allowing for things like Life Aid and Heal to be spammed while we're sitting here in the middle. Essentially creating a sort of infinite regeneration loop of sorts. And even then, we're still going to be taking losses here and there of just units getting taken out. I think this might have been one of the. I did end up redoing this map a bunch of times. This might have been one of the reset points because I know Yana's squad was available later. But like every one of these cases, somebody would end up getting taken out because of some little bit that got overlooked somewhere. That on paper, yeah, they can one-shot these squads, but it's never going to be consistent. It's never going to be consistent against absolutely every single thing. Something will eventually get them. I've seen something as simple as like, oh, you didn't notice that ballista over there? Oh, I'm sorry, that 16 damage was enough that suddenly now that one unit that was making the entire machine work is just like they're getting killed off due to some high priority thing. There's some kind of start of battle activation that isn't happening when you want it to. Essentially, some kind of thing flew in the cogs, and the machine no longer works. It's like here's one of those resets. After this took so many attempts, I was just like, okay, we're gonna throw in a checkpoint after after we take out that guy, and we're just gonna continue on from there because I was already really happy with that wolf kill there. At that point, I wasn't feeling like leaving and retooling the party or looking for new items or whatever else. I just wanted to stubborn my way through this. So yeah, we've kind of got the death dot sort of figured out in the middle here. Like we're basically living the what the Ogre Battle 64 devs were probably imagining in their head of this one squad, just like this squad of multiple different units serving as an army, like kind of refacing themselves to go deal with these different oncoming threats and whatever else. This is literally like frickin' Ankaseth describes the whole thing, and it just never ended up working that way in that game. But like we've got cases where, let's say we've got Zadie's squad over here, who can take on a lot of these squads in a more or less neutral manner. That the amount of healing that's on that squad through 3 sources of healing and an auto revive allows her to constantly take good trades to set up kills for the cavalry, which is now able to use their momentum moves to kill off the weakened units. So they're running down those weakened units and then getting to take a break while the cleric squad holds on there. Like it's easy to say, the clerics just make all the reviving happen and the druids end up shutting down offenses. But again, it is not the full story. Those druids will get shot by arrows and get taken out. You'll get suddenly ambushed at night versus werewolves and things that will get multiple attacks off before you can even do anything. Even if debuffed, they may still potentially stun units or whatever else. Same thing with the bears. That there's just always counters on counters on counters on counters on counters. And apparently, okay, what's going on with that? Apparently that one was a screenshot. Okay, fantastic. And I'm still getting decent with this recording method, so bear with me on that. Um, But like, yeah, by far we've got the most offense coming out of this Griffin squad here. They're actually going to get retooled a few times before the end of this fight. Even we're operating on complete zero stamina most of the time here. Zadie's squad over there again, just taking technical wins over and over and over, just trying to buy time for everybody else. And at any point, somebody might just get a lucky hit and completely wreck them. So this does end up happening. I forget if it's already happened at this point. It might have already happened. Yeah, because they're over there recovering. Because they ended up getting somebody taken out. I didn't have a point for life aid at that point. And as long as they have a life aid, then they can keep it going. But the fact that that units can just quickly get taken out like that, the difficulty in this game is fine-tuned to a mirror frickin' sheen as far as I'm concerned. Yes, stuff will be more powerful in certain situations. You're not scuffing through the entire game using just chip damage, and if you go out of your way to do every single frickin' side quest and whatever else, good lord, it is an RPG. What a shocker, you're actually going to get some benefit out of doing that. It's almost like that satisfying progression or something. So yeah, it is absolutely incredible. Now, I will say, definitely, one of the things that I'm hoping is true for TZ mode, I don't know if it is, but I'm probably just going to play like it is. I'm kind of hoping mid-battle saves are actually not allowed on that one, but again, the first playthrough, I'm letting myself use it, but every playthrough beyond that, like, for ones that were this long, like, I was literally on this fight for like 3 days. So, oh man. Like, yeah, I could have gone to do two other continents. I could have done all this other stuff, but dang it, stubbornness will prevail. Sometimes you gotta, you gotta just make your own fun, as it were. But like right here, these something as simple as those magic assists, right? So like something as simple as those could potentially set up a situation that the cavalry is able to quickly run through stuff here, or that one axe on that guy with its Beast Slayer bonus is enough to shut down a lot of these bear squads, but only in kind of certain aspects. So like right here, they can take several sort of chip damage wins, as it were, using combinations of stuns and whatever else. Did I just? I think I might have just hit backwards on it. I don't know. Anyway, so combinations of stuns and defense boosts and whatever else will constantly create those situations there for you. Like this was one of those interesting cases of like I wanted to see what could be done to get through this bear squad. But this is a perfect example of what I was talking about. They lost their cavalry, and they will repeatedly re-engage with this bear squad, but they're going to have a really hard time actually breaking through. Did I not clip that? I'm sure I clipped it. But they would have a hard time breaking through because every time, due to that one loss they took in the first engagement, they did an impressive number to begin with, but like they would end up, let's say, running into a situation like this. That now that the fight's seemingly just one attack away from done, they're stuck in a situation that if they don't get lucky with what happened right there, where they get multiple debuffs that landed correctly, they would have a hard time actually breaking through. And that was just one of the support squads. So like in this case, this is when we set up the automatic point farm. But that particular one, just for the purpose of reference, it was not simply the Flyers went in and did that job. It was a case that they actually ended up getting taken out by multiple different things on multiple different situations. That one town took a lot of resets. Where like in one particular case they would just end up losing somebody and they could get out healed permanently, or they would get hit by the catapult because there was so much stuff going on in other parts of the map that maybe I missed seeing the catapult shot because there's a catapult firing over the woods. Or if they ended up getting a technical loss at any point, the cavalry squad that's hiding behind the town will run out and just finish them off. Like, again, it's a bit reductive of the entire system at play to simply say that it's just send in the flyers and nothing else. Like, yeah, sure, like anybody else, I'm probably going to go do maybe less flying units and following playthroughs, but they have their role to play. They have their thing that they do, and they do that thing well. And to say that they're overpowered isn't exactly the kind of end-all answer to the whole thing, because they are still extremely vulnerable to a bunch of things. They're actually shockingly slow. They just get around things like water. so there's that. And then we've got cases like right there where, like, because the catapult's constantly firing, you don't necessarily want to keep that town garrisoned at all times. So you want to constantly kind of evacuate your units that are sitting on top of it. And even right here, again, the Ace squad ended up taking some injuries, so they're going to end up taking technical losses versus this guy. In this case, I believe they ended up just getting a lucky crit or something. Let's see what they ended up doing. Because, yeah, you can just re-roll for those lucky things here. Okay. Cool clip. Thank you. That was super useful. Thanks, me. Somehow they survived! Anyway, this is probably when Elaine's squad gets sent in again. You may notice that Flora and Serial's units over there, they're just kind of scuffy leftovers of other ideas, but they'll end up getting retooled into something else to purpose suit a lot of the things that are going on in this fight. Because in this case, this town watches over that road, which allows for Elaine's squad to use his bonus for extra valor points to constantly keep the rest of the team funded with their points, to keep things like life aid going, to keep things like a heal going, and eventually this will be important for actually winning the map. It still ends up coming down really far down to the wire there. So in this case, I was going for a wild swing setup. For some reason, oh, whoops, sorry, this is a weird setup to probably be doing. I got my my Steam Deck that I'm recording off of, sitting in this cool old rocking chair, trying to keep my feet up on another thing here, and ended up slipping and almost falling. Anyway, all good now. Okay, so yeah, we've got four squads here that are basically built for just kind of countering different stuff here. Whether it's Tiana's squad over here with the cavalry and the swordmaster to try to deal with more scouty type units. We got to deal with the Viking squads, who are more the purview of the flyers or lane squad. Since they are kind of the aces there, but in a pinch, I'm using Zadie's squad to injure them, potentially running them down with cavalry. Like as soon as you get a wounding opening for the cavalry to exploit, they're going to be really good for that kind of thing. And so then this became a thing of like, okay, we can't directly go for the leader squad. They simply don't have the firepower to do it. So I decided to set up another squad with Fran here, where I was going and essentially luring these yellow units into this fort up here. And on paper, that seemed like a really solid idea. Earlier, I had tried using the bear swing, whatever the hell that thing's called again, to actually launch both of those squads into there at the same time. But again, these guys ended up getting hunted down by a random scout that changed direction, so they end up getting taken out right there, and so we have to retool the plan yet again. So sucks, but well. So we have Yana's squad again over here, dealing with some of the Vikings here. They don't always have a good opening on the Vikings, but in that case they did. So we started building up points, because we needed a way to go take that town on the left to stop the Viking reinforcements from coming in. At least that seemed to be the way forward. Every time that I would try to take it, it ended up overstretching the party, because there weren't enough ace units with, you know, extremely well-built items and whatever else to go deal with all this other stuff. I say extremely well-built. I mean, comparatively speaking. Again, I'm sure there's a ton of items I'm missing in the game still, so leave your comments over. Here's all the specific trinket that combines really well with this other thing, that combines really well with this other thing, and if it happens to be exactly 3 a.m., then it happens to give them a quadruple times bonus, but only if it's a leap year kind of bullshit. So, like, we'll get there when we get there, but anyway, so right now we're just kind of trying to scuff our way through. The squad over here is probably on their 4th or 5th day of holding off against infinite scouts, just constantly getting rushed down, constantly swapping positions to try to deal with all these units that are coming in, trying to constantly put them all away. Like this, you'll see the numbers once we get to the very end. It gets ridiculous. I end up getting Ramona a team here, just so we have additional healing support, just for those little moments where those 10 to 15 damage might, potentially create that technical win we were looking for. Again, cavalry trying to get their rests where they can to try and run down these guys. I really should have swapped over their leader back to Philippe there. He's the head knight. I basically had her running as this to resist against the casters earlier. I was paranoid that they would start sending them out again, but they never actually ended up doing that, so that probably would have been the better way to go. I have another soldier there so that I'm able to go move a lane squad over to a completely different location, so that I don't have to keep moving him back and forth in order to use life aid. So she's here for life aid. The idea was to try and maybe use heavy swing to go for wounding units to be able to finish them off with the cavalry a bit sooner. Again, all of this stuff is potentially very, 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 theoretically overpowered in its own right, in its own situation, but that's the point. It is working as intended. It is working exactly as it should, and even in a case like this, where this squad, on paper, is just absolutely shredding everything that we're seeing here. In the case of Zadie's squad here, the reason that she was picked for this is she can take a loss. As long as she's standing, she can bring her entire team back. But being able to just wound these guys is enough to theoretically allow them more options to potentially carry forward. And so this was one of those potential reset points where I figured, okay, I've got 9 points. They're about to get completely run down. Rather than going for the usual thing, I'm going to go for those 3 wild charges back to back. It's going to be this big dramatic finish, as it were. We're going to just get through all of them entirely. We're gonna run them all down, and they're gonna be so wounded that this ace squad is just gonna be able to completely run them down, right? Because that's what everybody says happens every time. You know, it's just you just use Wild Rush and you win. And yeah, it's fun for a meme, but still. By the way, long story short, they ended up getting completely demolished. So first time through, they just ended up losing. So then I got it set up again to see if it was a fluke. So we end up going and withdrawing people from all over the place, kind of sacrifice that town to get another Wild Rush going. Because you know what happened that first time? Pretty much the same thing that's going to happen this second time. That they ran in the first time and it wasn't quite enough to get the job done. They were not able to shut down the units effectively enough to make anything stick. So we ended up switching over to a more debuff-orientated squad because they need to get a technical win in order to keep the momentum going to be able to keep this gravy train rolling. These guys heal so much that they will take technical losses over and over and over because, again, they are just meat walls. So, like, there, we'll go take one of those attacks. They've got 600 health to carve through. Getting them to specifically target the right units at the right time is surprisingly difficult. So what I was using was Wild Rush in order to use the full column thing. I ended up replacing all of the abilities on the Griffin with just the ability off of her Ice Axe, which she was carrying for this exact purpose. It was just like shutting down units in a particular case. Other times she's just completely not using it. Because normally you want her to just go for those AoEs, right? So ultimately, that leader squad ended up being completely impenetrable for this team here, because no amount of AoEs or whatever else was getting through their ridiculous defenses or anything along those lines. Even with 3 Wild Rushes, it's enough to take out their 2 owls in the back, but it's not enough to be able to carve through their guys in the front. Even when they were dropping 2 stuns and a freeze on the party there, it was enough to kind of stall out the fight, but they would end up getting too tired before they ended up actually getting a win there. So it simply put wasn't happening. So instead what I decided to do was to go for that town in the center, allowing us to have a bit of a closer deploy point. And in this case, I was trying to barely survive against these scouts because the cavalry is not good at dealing with the scouts, at least not in this situation. So she was going and throwing out mercenaries to take some chip damage on them to give them the momentum that they needed to survive, to try to buy enough time to go build up enough points to be able to support the squad up top there, because we had to use those 3 wild charges to go and break down the. To break down that town in the middle of the forest. Well, I guess it's more of a more of a garrison than town, but whatever. But do you see what I'm getting at about, like, it's more than just send in the one team to get everything done? Because one team by itself, through means of stamina, through means of just being too slow or whatever else, it isn't enough to get everything done by itself. And ultimately, it ended up coming down to, like, I was thinking, like, I just needed a cavalry squad here to go get the job done, right? So I go and get Elaine's team in here with their ability to shut down things a bit more effectively. Went for a Valorous here to give them first strike, figuring, okay, it's going to be enough to get through all of them. So I started going in with this. These are, by leaps and bounds, as far as items are concerned, the strongest of the bunch here, right? So they end up getting a few wins, and what happens once all's said and done there? They just send some scouts in to go take the HQ, because we didn't have anyone there to deal with the scouts anymore. So anyways, we end up going and addressing that situation again. So I tried a bit of a different way, because those two, the Griffins and the leader squad, were not enough to get it done on their own. So I get the cavalry in there this time, send in the Griffins to go deal with those scouts in the meantime instead, trying to buy some time using them. Because again, the AI knows when you've left your stuff unattended, and they will send the fastest dudes over there to go deal with it. So on paper, that cavalry squad would get completely just run over. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait for those guys to get closer and summon in archer squads to provide support fire. Those archer squads are going to take out those owls for us, so that there's less healing that's coming out of the werebears, which means that this cavalry might potentially just create that little opening to be able to charge through. So they end up taking all those shots. They end up dealing with the sport squads in the back. They create an opening where there's only two left. And even with all of this, even with with some of our better teams here, even with being able to hurt these guys, they still need to break it down to only one guy to be able to actually make this work. So, and once again, kind of last minute life aid coming in here to go get everybody back on their feet for one last charge to be able to actually win this thing. And even still, it felt like we were about to get run over with the Griffin squad here because they weren't able to deal with the tide of scouts that were coming in from all directions. Because eventually they just started losing more units than they could physically heal out of because they didn't have any logistical support for them. So eventually the cavalry ends up getting through, but now they're too damaged to do anything, and finally Elaine's squad comes in with just, again, barely holding on with the Griffin squad at this point. There's almost nothing left of them until finally, finally they're able to almost seemingly get the kill on the guy, and it's like, oh, it's still going to take one more attack, because he's managing to out-heal three dudes piling on him at once. So... like... You see what I'm getting at here? Like, it's not as simple as you just send the one the one winning team here, as it were. But ultimately, the answer was just to switch this guy for his phantom attack, so that he was getting out of his technical win mode. Just needed that one little cherry tap at that one correct moment. Even this guy, when he was frozen, he was freaking frozen solid and being hit by Slayer skills, losing AP and PP. He still was able to outfight the party. Without that particular move right there getting a crit. Again, one squad winning everything is just... It's either they're reloading or playing on an easier difficulty and just spamming items until they win. Like, yeah, you can do that on an easier difficulty. On Expert, not so much. But, like, look at that. 131 squads killed over the course of this thing. 130 frickin' 1. No, man, just send the flyers. They just gotta kill those two, and it's gonna be super easy. Although in-game time, 13 minutes. Though in reality, like, actual in-game time was like 10 days. So, yeah, that, man, seriously, that brought me back to the OV64 days. Those moments when you'd have moments exactly like this, or the March of the Black Queen ones where it was just squads constantly doing this. Also, I love that this absolutely preposterous bloodbath was for the purpose of getting these guys to negotiate. There were more kills over the course of that one fight than there were over the rest of the game combined. Oh my goodness. So yeah, and then, you got your usual just like little coastal maps of this, that, or the other. Little gimmick maps, where in this case it was all about support fire. And I love that they're still throwing out tutorials. This is like 30 plus hours into the game. They're like, yeah, did you know that you can use the owl's ability here to go boost the range of your support abilities, and that potentially could let you do some pretty cheesy stuff. God, I love this game. Okay, okay, weird note here. I know we're talking about strategy and things, but listen to the music. Listen to the music in this place. Tell me that this isn't a limitation by any other name. Just give it a sec. Give it a sec. We'll get there. There it is. That... It's limitation again, dude! It's Limitation Reborn. But yeah, this is basically Ogre Battle Reborn. Like, this is exactly what we wanted. Oh, man. God, I love it. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, that's pretty freaking fantastic stuff. Ultimately, yeah, they ended up doing this fight. Man, even this fight, too. Like, this is one of the later fights in the Bestrel area. The absolute aggression plays that you can do here are a thing of beauty. Like, it tells you right from the get-go, like, okay, scouting report says, because Fran has just decided to become prettier Hugo at this point, which basically tells you, oh yeah, the north is less defended, but realistically you can take a really hyper aggressive route straight down the middle, which is pretty freaking cool. Anyway. They can just go straight down that way. Let me see where it was. Because I don't think it was this attempt. Yeah, yeah, eventually you start running into this if you just decide to hold out. It's like, yeah, welcome to Bear Hell. Canada says hi. Yeah, the hockey team sends their regards. Even through guard call, it's just like so many werebear squads that you're just gonna get completely steamrolled. Okay, let's see. Yeah, like they are the Beast Slayer squad and have a bunch of defensive abilities for dealing with these guys. Still not enough, because those chips will eventually get through. But like, check this out. So you can go and set up a speed boost right from the get-go. Immediately rush down this spot right here. Take out this one. This fort has two little lanes going around it, so you can send two squads, trading off, taking the rest area. Maybe use some mines to go clear out some of the bigger death dots here along the way. Use them as kind of a logistics center to go support your flyers for going and taking out the leader squad. Like, it's so good, man. So good. There's just enough kind of campfires laying around that you can send your flyers in to go grab those whenever they need them. Like, as far as difficulty is concerned, this game has been thought through from top to bottom. People have clearly been going through these different scenarios for years, and it shows. Like, I know, like, we've seen the messages from the devs of, like, we just wanted to make something that people loved, and we probably took, a hell of a lot of financial risks to make it happen, and you can feel that from top to bottom. You can feel it absolutely everywhere. You can feel it all over the freaking place, man. But anyways, all right, I gotta get going though. That's all I had for today. We'll see if the next one's actually like the full review after completing the end game and then opening up New Game Plus and all that. But anyways, I gotta get going. Thank you guys for sticking by, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.